Welcome back, everyone. I am really excited to have on the show today Sarah Cottingham. So, Sarah is the owner and CEO of Incito Enterprises and COO of Dental Design Studios. She's a big picture thinker while paying attention to all the details, and a change maker and inspiration generator, which I can't wait to dive into all of that, which you submitted to me, Sarah. So we're going to talk about all of it. You got to explain yourself. So welcome to the show, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And so before we came on the show and started recording, we had a conversation about, and so I'm going to ask you right out the gate. I want to know the inspiration. I'm sure my whole audience wants to know about the name Incito. So could you share that with us? I love this story.
Well, when I rebranded after getting out of the corporate world and going back into private consulting, I was rebranding, and a friend of mine had brought up this word, incito, and I don't remember the derivative of the word, but the definition was to incite and inspire. And that's really just been the whole journey of my consulting business in the early years. I did a whole lot of inciting, and teams weren't necessarily super excited to see the consultant come in, but it always turned into inspiring. In the later years, I'm now known for going in and inspiring people to be better, and therefore then the business gets better.
Love it, right? And I love that you mentioned, right, the consultant walking in the door. It's like, they've got that side eye waiting for you because the owners, the founders, the CEO, the C-suite, whoever's bringing you in, know that there is a need for change. And then at times also you've done your discovery with those clients, and you have an understanding, a foundation of what change needs to happen. But the teams themselves, yeah, change management, good luck with that. So I appreciate you sharing that. When you shared it in the opening prior to starting, I loved it. And I thought, yeah, you think of the word incite. I don't know about you, but I hear the word incite, and the words that follow that for me is a riot. So yeah, and that could be good, bad, or indifferent, right? You can have a riotous laughter, or we've learned about what that could be about inciting a riot, in our recent history here in the United States. So, but we'll leave that aside, and we won't go down that path for sure. So, tell me how it is, Sarah, that you got into the business of dentistry. How did you get started? I love people's, origin stories, if you will. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, my parents were in dentistry. My dad sold equipment for Patterson Dental when it was operated out of a garage in Oregon. And my mom was an office manager, dental assistant. And so from very early age, I was groomed into you have to be a hygienist, have to be a hygienist. And of course, I went to nursing school first, and my parents couldn't be right. And after I figured out that nursing wasn't my gig, I went into assisting, and I assisted in the dental practice that my mom worked in. And I assisted expanded functions hygienist and walked into an open flap, bloody SRP, and I was hooked. So from that moment, I was in hygiene school within a year. Actually, it was much less than that. And I had been groomed in that dental practice, and it was a dental practice that was well ahead of its time. He was a very unique individual that he invested in his teams. Back in the early 80s, he had quit doing amalgams, and he was just he was a Pankey trained, Dawson trained, full functional, comprehensive style dentist. And I thought that's how dentistry was. And when I got out into the real world, I figured out through a lot of trials and tribulations that was not how dentistry was. And I, from the inside out, just started applying those things that I had learned from the years of just being with my mom in that dental practice and knowing him as an individual and a person and a friend, and just started growing practices that I was working in by just applying some of those things. And then fast forward to, I was recruited into a consulting company that I then bought, ran that for many years. And then I was recruited out of that company into a large continuing education corporation. We'll just leave the name out for right now. And
Okay, I
uh,
won't mention it. I
you
know it because I've seen your LinkedIn bio.
know, love it, absolutely love it. But corporate just wasn't for me. Everything that they were about, full function, comprehensive dentistry, doing the right thing at the right time, all of that was a fabulous fit. It just corporate wasn't for me. And I then went back into private consulting again, and which I still do that. And I was then most recently recruited into a DPO here in Phoenix. So I am spearheading 8 dental practices here in the Valley now. And so it is a full plate, and I'm extremely blessed.
I love all of this, and there's so much there. The not fitting into corporate, right? I learned so much from my corporate days. I was one of the first employees for Neodent, the value line that was bought by, well, invested in, and then finished the purchase by Straumann Group when they wanted to get a value line implant back in 2013. So it was the non-corporate, then the corporate side, and you figure out pretty quickly. And it sounds like sounds like if we're playing charades, as I tuck my ear, sounds like, from your upbringing, right? I was going to say you're a cradle to grave dental person, and so sorry, I don't think you're that close to the grave, Sarah. You're young. Don't take it that way, please. Don't take it that way. But the cradle to grave. I mean, groomed from the very beginning in dental, right? With a dad working for Patterson, which was just a small little, family operation out of Oregon, that area, and then your mom being an office manager. And that I love that, right? The bloody flap, and I was hooked. It's so much for me in full arch, which is my lane. 11 years ago, from the first full arch surgery that I was really involved in, right? That I had to put the parts and pieces together and try to convert them away from the competitor, and like having to do it by myself. And our clinical director, who's from Brazil, Alex Molinari, which God bless the man, one of my good friends to this day, who said, "You can do this. I can talk you through this. Like, don't worry, you got it. Here's what it looks like." And, it just such a kind mentor who taught me so much, and even to this day does. Whenever I see him and run into him like on the road randomly, it's so amazing. I was hooked as well, right? And the patient reveal, something that just transformative, right? So those things, those like forks in the road, and I love hearing that from you. Uh, you know, what I hear from you is that find your passion, find your path, and when you do, run with it. It'll lead you in the direction you want to go, right? But just listen and trust yourself. And running the 8 practices here, because I wanted to ask about that. And that's Digital Design Studios. Is that correct? The group that you're with now?
Dental Design Studios.
Dental Design Studios. See, I knew I'd get that wrong. I love being vulnerable, and I love showing my human side because it allows others to make mistakes. And so talk to me about that group, because Incito is something that you've had for a while. Talk to me about your relationship with that group, because is that a relatively newer enterprise group that you've been working with and that you've been doing? So talk to me about how that relationship came about and what you're doing for them and helping them to build and grow.
A couple of years ago, I had been referred to the owner and met with him on a consulting conversation. And at that time, he decided not to move forward because, he had brought on a new manager and he was wanting to really try and give that person a chance. And my last words to him were, typically, people call me back and then they tell me, I wish I would have done this sooner, which that's what happened. And so I went in on a consulting basis back in September to help him find a few key people. And it just turns out that I ended up being one of those key people that he couldn't let go from the consulting side. And so I now am the COO of the 8 practices. And we're just here digging in and getting even more established in the Valley and growing even more.
So I'm curious, someone from your background that does the consulting side, has done the consulting side, now a part of an 8 group practice in a COO role. It's not quite corporate because you get to determine a lot of things moving forward. the workflows to put in place, the culture that you're going to put into place. You sit at the table with the owners, the right hand person. You told them, hey, you're going to come calling back. I've had some of those experiences myself, even in the short time of that since relaunching G&A Consult. So I'm curious, what are some of the watchouts? Because I have clinicians, I have those industry folks, I have those that have their own business. Listening to the podcast, what are you finding along the way, or what are you telling yourself along the way to be like, okay, I know what the corporate and how that doesn't fit. So what are you establishing to make sure you don't end up like that corporate, so that people do want to be a part of the group? I mean, if you're at 8, you're right in that middle area where the C-suites have to start coming in and determining, is it the CFO, is it the COO, which you are, and those pieces as it's building and growing. So talk to me a little bit about that, because I'm super curious.
When you take it from 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 8, there's the one thing that it doesn't change about all of that, and it's the people that grow the business. And so if we really stay focused on the people that grow the business, and that we focus on growing the people to grow the business, it doesn't really matter whether we are 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 8. And if we don't forget that those are the people that are going to make this win. And when I came in on the consulting side and started establishing that, some of these people just haven't really been, their voice hasn't been heard recently. And they have a lot to say, and a lot of it's really good. So if we would listen to the people that are in the trenches and get them some of the resources that they need, they aren't being extravagant, they're being realistic. And if we give them more training around what it is that we want them to do and how to do it well, they all want to do the right thing. It's just that they didn't know when they should be applying it, when they should dig in and go like, yeah, no, that's not the right thing. And so it's just really shown through that if you really work on the people, the business will grow. And if the people are not the right people, you either find them a different seat on the bus if it fits. And if it doesn't, then don't be afraid to just go find the right people. And, the being held hostage by a couple of players that may or may not have the right seat on the bus, like, move them around, try them out, and see what happens. And we've been proving that it works.
And so tell me a little bit more about Dental Design Studios, because you're talking about a group of 8. So is it comprehensive dentistry? Is there a focus with it? Tell me a little bit more about that, because you're talking about moving parts and pieces here in the Valley. I live in the Valley, so I know about the Valley. We're all talking about the Valley. We're not talking about the Valley in California. We're talking about the Valley in Phoenix, correct? So yeah, so talk to me a little bit about, what types of services and whatnot, and what levers you're pulling, because there's some opportunity just depending on where some of the focus or the treatment mix, or where you're trying to build and grow with that 8-group practice, as I'm pretty familiar with the Valley here.
We're full service. And so we do have, we do full arch cases. They do endo in some of the offices. We do refer in some cases, depending on which office that we're in. We have ortho, and, we're really growing inside of the perio-focused hygiene department because that's a niche that, some of these groups kind of overlook, that is a huge component of growing any of the businesses, is foundationally getting the patients really healthy. So we are full service and just going after all of the aspects to serve our patients.
I love it. Absolutely. What are you finding is the biggest challenge as you're working with groups? And you talked about, right person, right seat is what I heard you say. I know you said moving around on the bus, but I use a little different vernacular for sure with clients that I work with. What are you finding that is the biggest challenge when you're sitting down having those intentional conversations with individuals, that you want to find out? I guess I'll use the word, if they're salvageable, because sometimes they're just in a position because that's where they've ended up. Not necessarily where they could expand, where they could flourish within a dental practice. And everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people will talk about, well, I want to be an office manager. Okay, that's great. So to dig at and get at, well, what is it about being an office manager do you really want? The pay, bossing people around, being self-determinant, those types of things, because I know what we do, but I'm curious about what is your process? What is it that you're doing that really makes you unique?
One, finding out what their gifts and talents really are, and if they can be related to people and have conversations that matter. Um, Getting in and not just having their opinion be the right opinion. People that are great listeners and strategists at heart. That they can see big picture and details depending on the role. In some roles, I only want details. So I'll go in and evaluate, are they both or are they one or the other, and where are they going to be best suited to operate within the business? And I have some that like they didn't even have it on the radar because they never even thought that they would be considered for that given where they're currently at in the business. And if I see that they've got all of the framework and they just never saw themselves in that vision, then I help them find it.
Yeah, love that. And being able to inspire people to actually see more in themselves. I mean, that's such a tremendous gift. And helping others, right? And mentoring others. So, what's one thing that you would share with someone that you're mentoring, either in that role or in general? Because you have such a plethora of knowledge and skill and experience in the industry. So, what is one piece of advice? Or I wouldn't even say that. What's something that you would share if you were doing some intentional mentoring with an individual? That just as a blanket statement and say, consider this. This is, if I could go back to my younger self in my career, I always love saying that. If you could go back to your younger self and you could mentor your younger self, because Lord knows, I mean, I told you this, before we started recording, and many people know this who listen to the podcast or who just know me in general. I've been sober 19 years. If I could go back to my younger self and say a few things, whew, thank God social media wasn't around then, that I didn't live that out loud, because the stories tell you what. so Sarah, if you could go back, what would you say to yourself to mentor, or if you're mentoring somebody, what's some advice that you would share with them?
Give up being right and make sure that you maintain the relationship, because there's more than one right answer. And if I can put a lot of right answers in the room to have a conversation about their right answers, like we're going to come up with an even better one. But we have to get out of our own way first, that we're the right answer. Because I've found more solutions to big problems that netted really, really big results because I got out of my own way of being right. And because the being right, how it typically shows up in the practice with some of these team members is that it comes off as being righteous. And, people just have to really start opening themselves up to, let the answers percolate up in the room. Let other people win. Let other people have a seat at the table, because that's when they want to play, and that's when they want to play big. And so I probably ripped a lot of people off in the early years that they had really, really good information, but I thought that mine was better. And I probably ripped them off in the process. And so I would tell my younger self that, maintain the relationship over that I have to be right.
Well, that takes a tremendous amount of self-awareness, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I can certainly identify with that. I would love to say that I've moved beyond that or learned that lesson, but I'd have to say that I'm continually learning that lesson in every new challenge that I'm faced with, in an ever expanding, ever exponentially changing, a growing field of dentistry. I mean, it moves faster sometimes than I can even maneuver with. Especially being in fixed full arch, it is constantly moving and shifting. And I bring best practices and my best self and my team as best we can. But certainly being open to setting aside being right. Sometimes it's the being right now and not so much being right, and working toward that. So thank you for that reminder for me, it was certainly helpful to hear that and continually to be continually learning and open to that there is more than one way to there's more than one way to skin a cat. That's just it's a phrase that I use, and people are like, where do you get these phrases? It's like, I don't know, they just come about. So I'm sure it came from a movie somewhere, or somebody said it offhanded, and now I just locked in on it, and I use it, because why would you skin a cat? That's just so wrong. So I'm an animal lover. I don't want to hear from PETA. Don't blow me up on socials, people, because I know you love to, with phrases and crazy things I say. So
Mine is there's lots of ways to get to New York. Some people take the train, some take the airplane, we're all going to get there if that's the destination. So,
this is the kinder, gentler way. So listen to Sarah more than you listen to the host of this podcast. So I love that. Sarah, this is the point of the program, though. All of my guests play. It's a little something called What the Sleuth is Going On? It's 3 rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to mind. Are you ready to play?
Yeah, sounds dangerous, but yes.
It's a little dangerous, yes. Okay, question number 1. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
Oh, a dentist that I worked for, that I had to let them know that it was, people knew he was coming in the room before he was even close. So yeah, that was a tough one.
I've had one of those. Isn't that difficult when they're the dentist and you're like, oh, yeah, that's tough. That's tough. That's tough. That's a tough conversation.
Went a lot better than I thought, so it was good.
Yeah. Nice. Question number 2. If you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
I really like my smile. It would be more my lip line. I smile really big, and sometimes in photos, it's like, wow, Sarah, drop your lip. But I love my smile.
They count. The lips are a part of the smile. I'll take it. Yeah, it's fair. You have a great smile. I agree. For those of you listening, like if you're running or scuba diving or whatever you're doing, lifting at the gym, she's got a great smile. Hop over to the YouTube. Check out her smile. It's great. I like it. Okay, question number 3. If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, and no, you can't use your own if you have one, which one would you choose and why?
The tongue vac, an ingenious suction device that was invented by a hygienist that I don't think enough people use. I would take that one on, decades before it was ever invented.
There is a theme for the regular listeners of the Tooth Sleuth. There is a theme over the last 5 or 6 episodes between products like Isolite, and you're talking about the tongue vac. These types of products have really gained prevalence, and I think, this is just me, I don't know, I could be wrong. I'm wrong often, just ask my husband. That there is a theme about being self-sufficient and then patient care. It goes into patient care and the patient experience, right? Instead of gagging and being punctured in the back of the throat. Not that any hygienist or any dental assistant would not know how to suction and would ever hit the back of the throat with the suction. Ladies, gentlemen, do you ever? All right, little truth here, right? But I love it. I love it. Great answers. Okay, well, Sarah, in the last few minutes, I want to respect your time and my listening audience's time. Is there anything I haven't asked that you want to share with my listening audience, or that you just want to get off your chest that you're thinking, his audience has to hear this? I've been aching to talk about this.
Don't give up on the next mountain. Figure out what that is for yourself, and always look at what's the thing that brings you the most joy, and go after that part inside of your career. Don't put those things on the back burner, because you can have it inclusive of your career and have all of it. And I'm a walking testimony of that. And I just encourage people to continue growing themselves so that they can grow whatever venue that they're in, whatever their path is, and just pour into more people.
Love it. And you talked about mentoring, and I'm actually starting a mastermind group for, I was going to say young, but no, burgeoning entrepreneurs, because I get mentored, I get asked about mentoring all the time for those that ask and say, how have you been successful? How have you accomplished what you have? And I love giving back. So I love that answer, right? Never stop reaching for what's next, right? Keep reaching, right? Never stop learning, never stop reaching. Sarah Cottingham, thank you so much for being a guest on the Two Sleuth podcast. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I wish you nothing but great success moving forward in your career and in life.